All right, this is probably the last part for the discussion right now around naturalistic teaching and building routines. So in the previous video, we talked about what to do if you already have a routine established and you're trying to build more shared enjoyment with that routine. So if you try with the materials to build more shared enjoyment and the child either doesn't, like they don't start smiling and really enjoying the experience with you more, maybe it even starts to cause some distress for them because the enjoyment of the routine for them is merely interacting with the materials. And the more you mess with the materials and trying to make it more fun, the more they're like, whoa, that's not what I'm supposed to do with these things. And you're messing me up here. So let's pretend you've tried a bunch of different things. You've tried to make it so that it's more fun with you and more enjoyable with you, and it's just not going anywhere. What do you do next? In that situation, again, going to depend on the child, but generally speaking, what I would suggest doing is keep object routines as they are. So the whole point with the object routines is just to be a helpful partner, to have some, time with you and the child interacting with that material, but you're really just following their lead and you're kind of just keeping the routine the same. You might be able to do things like maybe add in like some counting. So when they're putting the marbles in, maybe you're like 1, 2, 3, and you're doing things in that way to build up some language exposure. But the routine in of itself is the thing that's enjoyable for the child. So you're not going to mess with that. The routine with the objects is what they like, and you are going to try to just be a helpful participant within that routine, again, to show them that you're safe and that they can trust you and that you genuinely and authentically understand them and just want to participate with them in this thing that they enjoy. So then how do we create shared enjoyment for a situation like this? Usually that's going to involve more of the sensory social routines or the play with people where you're focusing on the interaction just between you and the child. So you might do things like bubbles, blowing a balloon up and releasing it, chase, tickles, picking up, like I love to do this one. It's like elevator going up and you lift the child up, and then you elevator going down and you put the child down. Different things like that are just between you and the child that could be fun and exciting. Spinning, swinging, all of those types of things. So with a lot of the clients that I've worked with, especially where there's a really high enjoyment from objects, I have to put in a lot of work, to figure out, what are the things that they would enjoy doing with me, and B, I just have to be like so much more just like physically exciting and big to kind of, again, capture that attention. So one example I like to give is I was in a clinic in Turkey, and there was a little boy who they were having a really hard time connecting with. And so he just was kind of like wandering around the room doing his thing. And I was just testing stuff out. So I like slowly like kind of stomped toward him, and I don't speak Turkish. I said nothing. I was just making like silly expressions and sounds and like stomping toward him. And he kind of stopped and looked at me like, ooh, what's happening here? And he really liked that. And then I sped up my pace and like stomped a little faster. And then I picked him up and he absolutely loved that. So then I knew, okay, for this kid, this is something fun that we can do, this like suspenseful stomping toward you and then like picking you up and spinning you around. With other children, have to try other things. Obviously, first have to make sure they're comfortable with my presence and wanting to engage in that way. If the physical piece isn't an option, then again, you might do things like blowing bubbles or having balloons where there's an object, but it goes away. And then you have to be the one to help bring it back. And then you can usually create more of a shared enjoyment and experience around something like that. I actually have a list from a really long time ago of, I think, like 100 different activities that involve a lot of these like sensory social play with people type activities. It's from, I think it's Scott Cross, and he was at UCLA. So if that's something where you're like, man, I just really don't have any ideas for how to do that, feel free to reach out to me and I can share that resource with you. And I haven't started advertising it yet, although maybe by the time I post this, I will. But we're going to be doing an AI workshop, and this is one of the things we'll be covering in there is how to use ChatGPT to come up with more creative ideas to engage our clients. Because while I can sit here with 20 plus years experience in the field and tell you some of these ideas based on my own time with clients, and thankfully having models of really creative people that I was able to imitate, when I first started in the field, I could not have done any of that. And even now, still, I'll struggle sometimes if it's like a new toy or a new activity or a new situation. I'm not necessarily always fluent in like, okay, how could I really connect with my client right now? So that's one of the things I love about ChatGPT. We can use AI to say like, hey, help me come up with ideas of how to be more creative with my clients.